we are fortunate on this stage to have a number of different experiences, both on the government side and the commercial side. Pierre has spent his life on the commercial side. Ali and myself have spent most of our time on the government side. Jimmy, you've been on both sides of the fence at NASA and now obviously in industry. And Dan, you're clearly starting out on the commercial side, but having some experience now with the government. So here's the question. I'm going to hand you a magic wand, all right? And that wand is going to enable you to remove one obstacle or add one connective piece of tissue between that government and commercial exchange. So what would you have us do differently to create a better partnership between government and commerce? And I'll take the moderator's prerogative and give you mine first. So in my last job, I spent time in fora like this to give presentations about the NGA vision or the future in 5 years and 10 years, et cetera. And invariably, I would get off the stage and, the balloons would fall and the band would play. And somebody on the contractor commercial side would come up to me and they'd said, "Nice speech, lovely speech. Could you please go talk to your contracting office?" Because what you're speeching about, okay, isn't getting into your requests. And I'm sure I'm not the first director to have that, disconnect, if you will. And by the way, this is not a hit on my contracting officers. They're great Americans, and they're just trying to get through their day. So I would wish to have a bridge that could better connect my vision, my need for the future of the agency with that that I'm actually telling you. So be clearer in explaining to you my needs, et cetera. So I don't have any particular order here. Does anyone want to take the wand first?
Okay.
Jimmy,
Right,
please.
So I think that's a great point. I think the difference when we do contracting with government and when we do contracting commercially, they're hugely different. And if those were a bit more similar, it would especially help smaller companies like ours. But I think closely related to that is the idea of standards. So when we go to pull imagery, it is very different from satellite provider to satellite provider, and it is even more different when you go on the government side and try to pull imagery that the government has already purchased and has in a database somewhere. So if we could build systems that could actually seamlessly, according to the same reasonable standards, pull imagery from all these providers, and then on the flip side, produce analytics that matched a standard, so that those analytics could easily be ingested by an oil company or a hedge fund or a government agency. It would be fantastic. It would really let us accelerate the progress on building analytics.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want the baton?
I can
Ali.
add, first, I think defining the standards. The standard is very, very important to be defined before it's shared with the industry. So the synchronization between, let's say, governments and contractors is need to be looked at. I think the second point is the property rights of systems, and that's a big challenge we have seen with the data provider. I think some of the policies and the exports allowed, but still with the cost of those systems, still created that politics of the property rights, of sharing it easily as we all wanted to have it.
Great. Dan, your company's had some early success, relatively speaking, with respect to government interaction. Anything you'd like to comment on what would make that better in the future, or something that you'd love to see removed from that exchange?
So I'd second your point about the challenges of doing business with the government. We've been having a lot of success with the AFWERX program in particular, and I think they've done a lot to try to remove that barrier on the Air Force side. They actually have, as the first step of the AFWERX program, they give you a grant just to do business development and give you a Sherpa to help you navigate the different parts of the Air Force. So just having access into the inside of who could be a potential user of your capability, it tends to be a bit opaque as you're standing outside trying to look in, but having somebody actually help usher you into that world has been really helpful. And then a barrier that we've run up against is on the regulatory side for spectrum. As an early stage company, We've launched 2 satellites now, and each of those satellites almost missed the launch because we didn't have our FCC license in time. One of those was timed up perfectly with the Swarm incident where they flew without a license. I think that just kind of ground everything to a halt for everybody in that time. But then the second was the government shutdown. The government was shut down, the FCC was shut down, and we actually did miss that flight, but didn't have to pay for a reflight because it was out of our hands and kind of an act of God as it was. So just, it's something that definitely needs to be there as a process, but I think with the volume of all these new players coming in and applying for licenses at the same time, it would be nice to see that sped up so that it wouldn't become a barrier to us missing a flight, which could mean that we have to fly a new flight and then we just don't have enough cash and we die as a startup, kind of on the vine.
Pierre, did you want to contribute?
Yes, I think one thing is that to be global, because it's different to discuss with your own government and to discuss globally, because the discussion is moving there. So all our services are going to be served outside our border. And one of the most important things to do and to improve, let me say, is to be able to be in touch with the right person at the right level with the right need. Because sometimes we are going to, we tour with the different part of the government trying to understand which is the need. And sometimes there are many, many requirements that are overlapped and sparse into the market. So this is globally thinking the most difficult things, because standards is at the base of, is one of the solutions. Because if we have a global standard, geoinformation standard, there are some of those, particularly in the defense, there are some clear way to work for. And the other things is the open-mindedness, because obviously there are different needs in terms of security and in terms of things that a government has to take in care, because it's its mandate to take in care of the security of the information. But sometimes it becomes a wall between technology and access to this kind of technology that is quite new, because we are now exiting to be a niche and we are entering to be a market. No, because the information that we are now able to extract from the data is much more valuable than in the past, because we are now able to treat the data. Because we have many data, and we have the GPU from AWS, we have our internal GPU systems, we are able to increase our capability. But the fact is that we have to have, on the other part, the open-minding, to interact with all the systems that we are able to tackle. Then we can enforce the security. So also to understand that we need a process to bring the information into the government.
Well, thank you all.